Liam pressed the elevator button for the 20th floor, balancing 3 coffee cups in one hand while clutching a stack of folders in the other. His reflection stared back at him from the polished steel doors, and he quickly adjusted his smile before the doors slid open. The smile had to be perfect. It always had to be perfect. The Moonstone Corporation occupied the top 5 floors of the tallest building in Silver Creek City, and Liam had worked there for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days. Not that he was counting. He loved his job, or at least that's what he told everyone who asked. Being the personal assistant to Marcus and Derek Blackwood, the twin alphas who ran both the company and the most powerful pack in the region, was supposed to be a dream come true for any Omega. And Liam made sure everyone believed it was his dream too. The executive floor hummed with quiet efficiency as Liam stepped out of the elevator. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Rebecca from accounting waved at him cheerfully, and Liam waved back, careful not to let his long sleeve ride up. The fabric of his shirt was carefully chosen, thick enough to hide what lay beneath, professional enough not to draw questions. Marcus's office door was already open when Liam approached. The alpha sat behind his massive desk, reviewing contracts with the kind of intense focus that made lesser wolves nervous. Marcus was built like someone who could protect an entire pack single-handedly, with dark hair that fell just slightly over his piercing blue eyes and a presence that commanded respect without demanding it. He looked up when Liam entered, and his serious expression softened into something warmer. "Morning, Liam. You're earlier than usual," Marcus said, accepting the coffee Liam placed on his desk. Their fingers didn't touch. Liam made sure of that. "I wanted to get a head start on the quarterly reports, sir. The board meeting is next week, and there's still data coming in from the Western Territories." Liam explained, his voice steady and professional. He'd practiced this tone for years, the one that said everything was fine, everything was under control. Derek's office was connected to Marcus's through a shared conference room, and Liam found the second twin already reviewing blueprints for a new pack housing development. Where Marcus was intense and focused, Derek carried a lighter energy, though no less powerful. His smile came easier, his laugh was quicker, but his eyes held the same protective instinct that all good alphas possessed. Both twins wore tailored suits that somehow made them look even more imposing, if that was possible. "You're a lifesaver, Liam," Derek said, gratefully taking his coffee. "I was up until 2 in the morning trying to make sense of these zoning regulations. Why does the human government make everything so complicated?" Liam allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Because they don't have pack bonds to rely on for cooperation, sir. They need rules to create order. Philosophy before 9 in the morning? You're going to make me think too hard," Derek teased, but there was appreciation in his eyes. He'd told Liam once that he was the best assistant they'd ever had, that he anticipated their needs before they even knew what they needed. Liam had glowed under that praise for days, even though Reed had rolled his eyes and said Derek was just being polite. The morning proceeded like most mornings did. Liam organized meetings, fielded phone calls, coordinated between departments, and made sure the twins had everything they needed to run their empire. He was good at his job, excellent even, and he took pride in that. When everything else in his life felt like it was falling apart, work was the one place where he could still feel competent and valued. Around noon, Liam's phone buzzed with a text message. His hand shook slightly as he read it. "Why aren't you answering my calls? Don't think you can ignore me just because you're playing secretary for those alphas. I'll be there at 6 to pick you up. Don't make me wait." The message was from Red, and Liam felt his stomach twist into familiar knots. Reed was an alpha too, though not as powerful or important as the Blackwood twins. They'd been dating for 2 years, and at first, everything had seemed wonderful. Reed had been charming and attentive, making Liam feel special in ways he'd never felt before. But slowly, so slowly that Liam hadn't noticed until it was too late, things had changed. It started with small criticisms. Liam's clothes weren't right. His voice was too soft. He wasn't submissive enough, or he was too submissive. He spent too much time at work. He didn't appreciate everything Red did for him. The criticisms became demands, and the demands became punishments. At first, it was just words that cut deeper than any blade. Then it became rough grabs that left bruises. Then it became worse. But Reed was always so sorry afterward. He'd hold Liam and cry, saying he didn't mean it, that Liam just made him so crazy with worry and love that he couldn't control himself. He'd buy Liam gifts and promise it would never happen again. And Liam wanted to believe him so badly that he convinced himself each time was the last time. Besides, Reed was right about one thing: who else would want Liam? He was just an ordinary Omega, nothing special, nothing worth fighting for. Liam tucked his phone away and returned to work, but his hands trembled slightly as he typed. He pulled his sleeves down further, making sure the finger-shaped bruises on his wrists stayed hidden. They were from 3 days ago, when Reed had gotten angry that Liam had laughed at something Derek said. Reed didn't like when Liam seemed too comfortable around other alphas. The afternoon brought the weekly department head meeting, and Liam sat in his usual corner, taking notes and managing the presentation slides. He was so focused on his work that he didn't notice Marcus watching him with unusual intensity. The alpha's eyes narrowed when Liam reached across the table for a pen someone had dropped, and his sleeve rode up just enough to reveal a shadow of purple and yellow on his skin before Liam quickly yanked it back down. Derek noticed his brother's expression and followed his gaze, but Liam had already covered up again. The twins exchanged a look that held entire conversations, the kind of wordless communication that came from sharing both a womb and a pack bond. Something wasn't right with their assistant, and they'd been noticing the signs for weeks now. Liam flinched when people moved too quickly near him. He made excuses to work late, as if he didn't want to go home. His smiles, while frequent, never quite reached his eyes anymore. He'd lost weight, and there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. And now, possibly, bruises. The meeting ended, and people filtered out, chatting about weekend plans and upcoming projects. Liam began gathering papers, his movements efficient and practiced. He had 45 minutes before Reed would arrive, and he still needed to finish updating the client database and send out the schedule for next week's appointments. "Liam, do you have a moment?" Marcus called from the doorway of his office, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. Liam's heart jumped, but he kept his expression pleasant. "Of course, sir. What do you need?" "I've been reviewing your work schedule. You've put in a lot of overtime lately. Are we overworking you?" Marcus asked, leaning against his desk in a deliberately non-threatening posture. "Not at all, sir. I enjoy my work," Liam assured him quickly. Too quickly. "I like staying busy. Still, everyone needs rest. When was the last time you took a vacation?" Derek added, appearing in the doorway with a kind of timing that suggested the twins had planned this conversation. Liam couldn't remember the last time he'd taken a day off, let alone a vacation. Reed said vacations were wasteful, that Liam should be grateful he had a job at all. "I'm fine, really. I don't need time off." The twins didn't look convinced, but before they could press further, Liam's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and went pale. "I'm outside, now." Reed was early, and he was angry. The text's brevity spoke volumes. "I need to go," Liam said, gathering his things with barely controlled panic. "My ride is here. I'll see you both tomorrow." He rushed out before either twin could respond, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. The elevator ride down felt like it took forever, and Liam used the time to check his reflection, making sure he looked calm and happy. Reed hated when he looked nervous in public. The late afternoon sun was still bright when Liam exited the building. Reed's car idled by the curb, and Liam could see his alpha's tight expression through the windshield. He climbed into the passenger seat, forcing his smile to stay in place. "You're late," Reed said coldly, not looking at him. "You said 6, it's only 5:40, Liam replied carefully, keeping his voice neutral. "Don't talk back to me." Reed's hand shot out and grabbed Liam's arm, right where the worst of the bruises were, and Liam couldn't stop the small gasp of pain that escaped. "And don't think I didn't notice how you were looking at those alphas today." "I wasn't," Liam started, but Reed's grip tightened, and the words died in his throat. "We'll discuss this at home," Reed said, finally pulling away from the curb. "And this time, maybe you'll actually learn your lesson." Liam said nothing, just stared out the window and wondered when his life had become something to survive rather than something to live. He didn't see the two figures watching from the 20th floor window, their expressions dark with concern and growing anger. He didn't know that Marcus and Derek had seen Reed's car, had seen the way Liam's body language changed the moment he got in, had seen through their wolf-enhanced vision the way the other alpha had grabbed their assistant. But he would find out soon enough, because the Blackwood twins didn't tolerate anyone harming members of their pack. And whether Liam realized it yet or not, he was theirs to protect. That evening, back in the Moonstone Corporation building, Marcus and Derek stood in silence, processing what they'd witnessed. Finally, Derek spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "We need to do something. Now." Marcus nodded, his alpha instincts roaring to protect an Omega in distress. "Tomorrow, we watch carefully, and if our suspicions are right, we act. No Omega suffers in our pack, not on our watch." Neither of them slept well that night, their wolves restless with the need to protect. And in a small apartment across town, Liam lay awake too, staring at the ceiling and wondering how much longer he could keep pretending that everything was fine. He pulled the blankets up to his chin, even though the night was warm, and wished for things he didn't dare name: safety, kindness, a place where he didn't have to hide, someone who saw him, really saw him, and didn't turn away. But wishes were for children, and Liam had learned long ago that Omegas like him didn't get fairy tale endings. They just survived, one day at a time, and told themselves that was enough. The Moonstone Pack Council met every full moon in a building that looked like a regular community center from the outside, but held the weight of centuries of tradition within its walls. Tonight wasn't a regular council meeting, though. Tonight was an emergency session, and the air crackled with tension and the power of angry alphas. Marcus and Derek stood at the center of the room, their presence commanding absolute attention. Before them, held between two of the pack's strongest enforcers, stood Reed, looking significantly less confident than usual. And behind the twins, wrapped in Derek's jacket despite the warm evening, sat Liam on a chair that someone had brought specifically for him because his legs wouldn't stop shaking. 3 days had passed since that terrible night when everything changed. 3 days since Marcus and Derek had heard the crash outside their offices and rushed out to find Reed with Liam pressed against the wall, his torn sleeve revealing what Liam had worked so hard to hide. 3 days since the twins' wolves had surged forward with protective rage, so powerful that Red had been thrown backward by the sheer force of their alpha command. But before all that, before the rescue and the revelation, there had been the ride home with Reed. Liam's memory of that night was fragmented, pieces of pain and fear that he'd tried so hard to forget, but couldn't. Reed had driven in silence, his anger filling the car like toxic smoke. When they'd reached Reed's apartment, the one Liam had been basically living in for the past year, Reed had grabbed his arm hard enough to make Liam cry out. "You think you're so special, don't you?" Reed had hissed, dragging Liam inside. "Those fancy alphas smile at you, and suddenly you forget who actually cares about you. Who took you in when you were nothing?" "I don't think that," Liam had protested, tears already forming. He knew this mood, knew there was no right answer, no way to calm Reed down once he got like this. "I was just doing my job, that's all." But Reed hadn't listened. He'd pushed Liam toward the bedroom, his words becoming crueler, his hands becoming rougher. Liam had curled up and endured, like he always did, telling himself it would be over soon. Reed would calm down, would apologize, and everything would return to the careful balance they'd established. Survive until morning, that was the goal. Except this time, Liam had forgotten his phone charger at work, and when Reed had finally exhausted himself and fallen asleep, Liam had made a decision that would change everything. He'd slipped out of the apartment and driven back to Moonstone Corporation to retrieve it. Because he'd need his phone tomorrow for work, and Red would be angry if Liam asked to borrow his charger. Angry Reed was the last thing Liam could handle. The building had been mostly empty, just security and a few workaholics burning the midnight oil. Liam had used his keycard to access the executive floor, moving quietly through the darkened offices. He'd found his charger right where he'd left it, plugged in by his desk. He'd been about to leave when he heard voices coming from the twins' conference room. "Can't ignore it anymore, Marcus. You saw what I saw." "I know, Derek, but what can we do if he won't ask for help?" Liam had frozen. They were talking about him. He'd been so careful, so meticulous about hiding his situation, but somehow they'd seen through his masks. "We're his alphas, whether officially or not. He works for our pack, under our protection. That makes him our responsibility." Marcus had continued, and there was steel in his voice that Liam had never heard directed at him before. "We need evidence, something concrete, because if we accuse that alpha publicly without proof, it could backfire on Liam." Derek had responded, practical even in anger. "Liam should have left then. should have slipped away and pretended he'd heard nothing. Instead, he'd stood paralyzed in the hallway, listening to two of the most powerful alphas in the region discuss how to protect him. An ordinary Omega who wasn't worth this much trouble. His phone had buzzed in his pocket, and Liam had fumbled for it, nearly dropping it in his panic. Reed's name flashed on the screen with a message that made Liam's blood run cold. "Where are you? You better not be where I think you are." Liam had run. Not toward the elevator, but away from it, deeper into the offices, because he'd heard the elevator ding, and somehow knew, just knew, that Reed had followed him. His boyfriend had probably woken up, found Liam gone, and tracked his phone or just guessed where he'd go. Reed was smart like that, always one step ahead, always watching. The executive offices had a back stairwell for emergencies, and Liam had headed for it, his heart pounding so hard he felt dizzy. But Reed had been faster. His alpha speed had caught up with Liam just outside Marcus's office, and his hand had closed around Liam's arm like a vice. "I told you not to come back here at night," Reed had snarled, spinning Liam around. "What were you doing? Meeting them? Is that it? You think you can replace me with richer, more powerful alphas?" "No, I just needed my charger, I swear," Liam had gasped out, trying to pull away. But Reed's grip had only tightened, and Liam had felt something in his arms strain under the pressure. "Liar!" Reed had shoved Liam backward, and Liam had crashed into a filing cabinet, the metal corner catching his shoulder. Papers had scattered everywhere, and the noise had echoed through the quiet floor like thunder. Then Reed had been on him again, and this time Liam's shirt sleeve had torn as he'd tried to protect himself. The fabric had ripped from shoulder to wrist, exposing everything Liam had worked so hard to conceal. Bruises in various stages of healing, old scars from past incidents, finger marks and grab marks in purple and yellow and green. "You're pathetic," Reed had hissed, and Liam had closed his eyes, waiting for what came next. But what came next wasn't more violence from Reed. Instead, Liam had heard a sound he'd never forget, a deep, resonant growl that vibrated through the very foundation of the building. Alpha command, pure and furious, powerful enough that even Liam's Omega instincts had responded despite his fear. Reed had been torn away from him so fast that Liam hadn't even seen it happen. One moment, his boyfriend had been there, and the next, Reed had been across the hallway with Marcus's hand wrapped around his throat, the alpha's eyes glowing with primal protective rage. "Don't move." Marcus's voice hadn't been loud, but it had carried absolute authority. Reed had frozen, his own alpha instincts submitting to the more dominant wolf. Derek had appeared beside Liam immediately, his hands gentle as he'd helped the Omega sit up. "It's okay. You're safe now. We've got you." His voice had been soft, soothing, everything Reed's had never been. Liam had started shaking then, really shaking, the adrenaline finally catching up with him. Derek had carefully wrapped his own jacket around Liam's shoulders, covering the exposed arm, providing warmth and comfort and protection. The scent of the alpha's jacket had been clean and fresh, like pine forests and morning rain. So different from Reed's cologne that always seemed too strong, too suffocating. "Call security. Call the Pack Council. This ends now," Marcus had commanded, his hands still holding Red in place. The rest of that night had passed in a blur. Pack security had arrived and taken Reed into custody. Dr. Helen, the Pack physician, had been called despite the late hour and had examined Liam with professional efficiency, mixed with gentle compassion. She'd documented everything, every bruise, every scar, every injury that told the story Liam had been too afraid to speak aloud. Marcus and Derek had taken Liam to their home that night, refusing to let him return to Reed's apartment or even his own small place across town. Their house had been nothing like Liam expected. Yes, it was large and beautiful, but it was also warm and lived in, filled with comfortable furniture and photographs of Pack gatherings. The guest room they'd given Liam had been bigger than his entire apartment, with soft bedding and windows that looked out over the Pack lands. "You don't have to work tomorrow, or the next day. Take all the time you need," Derek had told him, setting fresh towels on the dresser. But the quarterly reports and the board meeting, Liam had started automatically, his mind going to work because work was safe, work made sense. "Are not your responsibility right now," Marcus had interrupted firmly but kindly. "Your only job is to rest and heal. We'll handle everything else." That had been 3 days ago, and Liam still couldn't quite believe it was real. He'd spent most of the first day sleeping, exhausted in ways he hadn't realized until he'd finally felt safe enough to let his guard down. Dr. Helen had visited twice, checking his injuries and talking to him about trauma and healing in ways that made Liam realize how much damage Red had done beyond the physical scars. The twins had been patient and kind in ways Liam hadn't experienced in years. Marcus had cooked breakfast each morning, actual homemade meals, not the cereal or nothing that had been Liam's standard. Derek had sat with him in the evenings, not demanding conversation but just being present, showing Liam that he wasn't alone anymore. But it hadn't all been peaceful. The pack rumor mill had started churning almost immediately. Some pack members were supportive, but others had listened to Reed's version of events. Reed had told anyone who would listen that Liam was lying, that he was just trying to get attention from powerful alphas, that he'd seduced Reed and then cried victim when things didn't go his way. Some people believed him. Liam had seen the whispers when Dr. Helen had taken him to the pack clinic for a follow-up appointment. He'd heard the speculation that maybe he'd asked for it, maybe he'd provoked Reed, maybe he was playing victim to climb the social ladder. Each whisper had cut deeper than any physical wound. "They don't know the truth," Derek had said when he'd found Liam crying in the guest room after that clinic visit. "And we'll make sure everyone knows the truth." Which brought them to tonight, to this emergency council meeting where everything would be decided. The council consisted of 12 senior pack members, alphas, betas, and even 2 omegas who held positions of respect and authority. They sat in a semicircle, their expressions ranging from sympathetic to skeptical as they listened to the evidence. Dr. Helen presented her medical findings first, her voice clinical and clear. "The injuries I documented show a pattern consistent with long-term abuse. Some of the scars are months old, the bruising indicates repeated grabbing and restraint. These are not injuries from a single incident or accident. This is systematic harm over an extended period." Reed's lawyer, a sharp-featured beta named Connor, stood to object. "All this proves is that Liam has injuries. It doesn't prove who caused them. My client maintains that their relationship was normal and consensual, and that Liam is now fabricating allegations after a simple argument." Liam felt sick. This was why he'd never reported anything before. Who would believe him? Reed was charming and likable in public. He had friends, had standing in the community. Liam was just an assistant, just an omega, just someone easy to overlook and easier to dismiss. But then Marcus stepped forward, and the authority in his presence silenced the murmurs in the room. 3 days ago, my brother and I witnessed Red assaulting Liam in our offices. We saw him grab Liam hard enough to tear clothing. We heard him making threats. We saw the fear in Liam's eyes. This wasn't a simple argument. This was violence. "With respect, Alpha Marcus," Connor said smoothly, "you witnessed the end of an altercation. You didn't see how it started. Perhaps Liam provoked. Are you suggesting that an Omega deserves to be assaulted for any reason?" Derek's voice was dangerously quiet, and several council members shifted uncomfortably. "I'm suggesting that we need to hear all sides before rushing to judgment," Connor replied. Liam closed his eyes. This was pointless. Reed would get away with it because he always did, because he was smart enough to hide his cruelty from witnesses, because society still believed that Omegas were emotional and unreliable and prone to exaggeration. Then a voice spoke up from the back of the room, soft and trembling. "He hurt me too." Every head turned. A young Omega named Sophie stood near the door, her hands clasped tightly together. Liam recognized her from pack gatherings but had never spoken to her much. "Reed dated me 2 years ago," Sophie continued, her voice getting stronger. "He did the same things. He hurt me. He told me no one would believe me if I reported it. So I left him and never said anything. But I can't stay quiet anymore. Not when someone else is suffering." Another voice joined hers. "He hurt me too," said an Omega named Thomas, standing from his seat in the audience. 3 years ago, same pattern, same threats. And then a third, a beta woman named Rachel. "He didn't hurt me physically, but he dated my sister. She had bruises. She was afraid. We convinced her to break up with him, but she was too scared to file a report." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Reed's face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. Connor looked like he'd been slapped, his prepared arguments crumbling in the face of multiple testimonies. Marcus raised his hand, and silence fell immediately. "It seems there's a pattern here that goes far beyond one person's word against another's." The council deliberated for what felt like hours, but was probably only 45 minutes. Liam sat still the entire time, Derek standing protectively beside his chair. Marcus addressing the council with the kind of natural leadership that made people want to follow him. When the council elder, a woman named Margaret who'd been with the Moonstone Pack for 60 years, finally stood to deliver their verdict, the room held its collective breath. "The council finds the evidence overwhelming and credible," Margaret said, her voice carrying the weight of decades of wisdom. "Reed Morrison, you are hereby banished from the Moonstone Pack. Effective immediately, you will leave our territory within 24 hours and will not return under penalty of challenge from our alphas." Reed exploded. "This is insane. You're taking the word of attention-seeking Omegas over a respected alpha? They're lying. All of them." But his protests fell on deaf ears. The council's decision was final, and pack enforcers moved to escort Reed from the building. As he passed Liam's chair, he tried one last manipulation. "Liam, tell them you're lying. We can fix this. I love you." For the first time in 2 years, Liam looked Red directly in the eyes without flinching. "You never loved me. You hurt me, and I'm glad I'll never have to see you again." Reed's face twisted with rage, but the enforcers had him firmly in hand, and he was dragged from the room still protesting. The door closed behind him, and it felt like a chapter of Liam's life closing with it. The pack members who had whispered about Liam approached him afterward, some apologizing, others just offering silent support with gentle touches to his shoulder or nods of respect. Sophie, Thomas, and Rachel gathered around him, and for the first time, Liam realized he wasn't alone. There were others who understood, who'd survived, who could help him heal. Marcus and Derek took him home because that's what their house had started to feel like. Home, and for the first night since everything had happened, Liam slept without nightmares. He woke up the next morning to the smell of bacon and coffee, and found Derek in the kitchen making breakfast, while Marcus read the newspaper at the table. They looked up when Liam entered, and their smiles were warm and genuine. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked. Liam thought about the question carefully. He hurt in places that were deep and might take years to fully heal. He was scared about what came next, and whether he could really trust his own judgment anymore. But he was also free. Free from fear, free from walking on eggshells, free from pretending everything was fine. "I feel like maybe, eventually, I might be okay," Liam said honestly. Derek came over and gently placed a plate of breakfast in front of him. "That's a good start. And we'll be here for as long as you need us." Over the following weeks, something beautiful started to happen. Liam began to remember who he'd been before Red, before the fear and pain had changed him. He laughed more, genuine laughter that bubbled up without forcing it. He started speaking his mind about things, sharing opinions he'd kept silent for so long. Marcus taught him how to bake, and they spent an afternoon creating the worst cookies anyone had ever tasted because they'd accidentally used salt instead of sugar. Instead of getting angry about the waste, Marcus had just laughed and said they'd try again tomorrow. The next batch had been perfect, and Liam had felt proud of something he'd created for the first time in years. Derek took him running through the packlands in wolf form, something Liam hadn't done since he'd started dating Reed. Reed had always said Omega wolves were weak and slow, but running alongside Derek, Liam remembered the joy of letting his wolf free, of feeling the earth under his paws and the wind in his fur. His wolf wasn't weak. His wolf was beautiful and strong and had survived when survival had seemed impossible. But healing wasn't linear. Some days, Liam would hear a door slam or a voice raised in anger from a television show, and he'd freeze, panic flooding through him. Marcus and Derek learned to recognize these moments, to give Liam space when he needed it, and comfort when he asked for it, never pushing, always patient. Dr. Helen connected Liam with a therapist who specialized in trauma, and slowly, session by session, Liam started untangling the knots Reed had tied in his mind. He learned that the abuse wasn't his fault. He learned that he hadn't deserved it, hadn't caused it, hadn't been weak for not leaving sooner. He learned that healing meant feeling everything: anger, grief, fear, hope, and that all of those feelings were valid. The pack rallied around him in ways he hadn't expected. Sophie, Thomas, and Rachel became friends, supporting each other through their shared experiences. Other Omegas in the pack looked at Liam with new respect, seeing his survival as a form of strength rather than weakness. And through it all, Marcus and Derek were there. Not as bosses, not as pack alphas performing a duty, but as people who genuinely cared about Liam's well-being. They celebrated his good days and supported him through his bad ones. They made him feel valued not for what he could do for them, but for who he was. One evening, about 6 weeks after the trial, Liam found himself on the back porch of the twins' house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Marcus and Derek joined him, each holding a cup of tea, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. "I need to tell you something," Liam said finally, his voice quiet but steady. "Thank you. For believing me, for protecting me, for showing me what real kindness looks like. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay." "You don't owe us anything," Marcus interrupted gently. "Your recovery, your happiness, those aren't debts to be repaid, they're things you deserve." "But we do need to tell you something too," Derek added, and there was nervousness in his voice that Liam had never heard before. Liam turned to look at them, curious and slightly worried. Marcus set down his tea and met Liam's eyes directly. "These past weeks, having you here, seeing you heal and grow and become yourself again, it's been incredible. You're incredible. And somewhere along the way, our feelings changed from protective pack alphas to something more. We understand if this is too soon, or if you're not interested," Derek continued quickly. "We don't want you to feel pressured or obligated. You're free to stay here as long as you need, regardless of your answer. But we needed to be honest with you. Our wolves recognize you as ours, and our hearts agree." Liam's breath caught. Part of him wanted to panic, to run, because relationships had meant pain and control and fear. But another part of him, the part that had been slowly healing, recognized the truth in their words. He'd felt the shift too, the way his Omega wolf had started responding to them not just as safe alphas but as potential mates. The way his heart had started beating faster when they smiled at him. The way he'd started craving their presence not out of fear of being alone but out of genuine desire for their company. "I'm scared," Liam admitted, his hands trembling slightly. "I'm scared of trusting someone again. I'm scared of making another mistake." "Those fears are valid," Marcus said softly, "and we would never ask you to ignore them. We can take this as slowly as you need. We can be just friends if that's what you want. I want to try," Liam interrupted, surprising himself with his certainty. "I want to try because you've shown me what real respect looks like, what real care looks like. I want to try because I'm starting to remember what hope feels like, and I think you're part of that hope." Derek's smile could have lit up the entire Packlands. Marcus reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, giving Liam every opportunity to pull away. When Liam didn't, Marcus gently took his hand. "Then we'll try together," Marcus promised. "At your pace, with your rules, and if you ever want to stop, for any reason, we stop. No questions, no anger, no punishment. Just understanding." That night, Liam went to bed with a lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. The road ahead would still be difficult. Healing wasn't something that happened overnight. But for the first time since Reed had entered his life, Liam felt like he was moving forward instead of just surviving. He had friends who understood his pain. He had alphas who respected his boundaries. He had a future that looked bright instead of terrifying. And as he drifted off to sleep, his Omega wolf curled up contentedly in his mind, finally feeling safe enough to rest. The storm had passed. The healing had begun. And tomorrow would be another step toward the life Liam deserved. 6 months after Reed's banishment, Liam stood in front of the mirror in his new bedroom, no longer the guest room, but a space Marcus and Derek helped him decorate to reflect his own personality and style, and barely recognized the Omega staring back at him. His eyes were brighter, his shoulders straighter, his smile genuine. He'd gained back the weight he'd lost during his time with Reed, and the shadows that had haunted his expression for so long had finally faded. The physical scars remained, of course. They would always be there, faint lines and marks that told the story of survival. But Liam had learned to see them differently. They weren't marks of shame or weakness anymore. They were proof that he'd endured something terrible and come through the other side. They were his warrior marks, as Sophie had once called them, and Liam was learning to wear them with pride. Today was significant for multiple reasons. It was the Moonstone Pack's annual Full Moon Festival, a celebration that brought together the entire pack for food, games, and the strengthening of pack bonds. It was also Liam's first major public appearance as the twins' official courting partner, a development that had sent ripples through the pack when Marcus and Derek had announced it 3 months ago. The courting had been everything Reed's version of a relationship hadn't been. Marcus and Derek had been patient beyond measure, never pushing for more than Liam was comfortable giving. They'd started with simple things, holding hands during movie nights, gentle hugs when Liam initiated them, sweet words that built him up instead of tearing him down. Derek had taken Liam on actual dates, proper ones where they went to restaurants or walked through art galleries or attended pack events together. He'd ask Liam about his interests and actually listen to the answers, remembering small details and bringing them up in later conversations. When Liam had mentioned loving old bookstores, Derek had spent an entire Saturday afternoon exploring dusty shops with him, never once complaining or rushing him. Marcus had shown love through actions. He'd noticed that Liam was anxious about returning to work, worried that people would see him differently, or that he couldn't perform his duties as well anymore. So Marcus had worked with him gradually, letting Liam take on tasks at his own pace, celebrating every achievement no matter how small. When Liam had finally returned to his full duties, Marcus had made sure the entire office knew that Liam's position was secure and respected. Together, the twins had created a safe space where Liam could rediscover himself. They'd encouraged him to pursue hobbies he'd given up. They'd supported him through therapy sessions and the occasional nightmare. They'd shown him that love wasn't about control or ownership, but about partnership and mutual respect. And slowly, carefully, Liam had opened his heart to them. He'd allowed himself to fall in love, real love, the kind that felt like coming home after a long journey. His Omega Wolf had recognized them as true mates, and for the first time in his life, Liam understood what the ancient pack stories meant when they talked about finding your other half. The festival was being held at the pack's central gathering grounds, a beautiful space with mature oak trees and carefully maintained grass perfect for pack runs and celebrations. When Liam arrived with Marcus and Derek, the party was already in full swing. Pack members milled about, children ran and played in wolf form, and the smell of grilled food filled the air. Several pack members approached to greet them, and Liam noticed something he'd never experienced before. They were greeting him with the same respect they showed the twins. Not as an afterthought or an accessory, but as someone important in his own right. It was a heady feeling, being seen and valued. Sophie bounded over with Thomas and Rachel in tow, all three of them looking happy and healthy. The four of them had formed a tight friendship over the past months, supporting each other through recovery and celebrating each other's victories. They'd even started a support group for other survivors of abuse, creating a safe space for pack members to share their stories and heal together. "You look amazing," Sophie said, hugging Liam tightly. She'd dyed her hair a vibrant purple recently, a bold choice that she'd told Liam represented her reclaiming her right to make decisions about her own body. "You all do," Liam replied warmly. "Is the support group meeting still on for Tuesday?" "Absolutely," Thomas confirmed. He was a teacher at the pack's school now, working with young wolves to educate them about healthy relationships and recognizing warning signs of abuse. "We've got 3 new members joining. Word is spreading that it's okay to ask for help." That was perhaps the most unexpected outcome of Liam's ordeal. By speaking his truth, by refusing to hide his survival, he'd opened a door for others to do the same. The pack was changing, slowly but surely, becoming a place where victims of abuse were believed and supported rather than dismissed or blamed. The evening progressed with food and laughter and pack bonding. Liam found himself relaxing in ways he never could at social events with Reed, who had always monitored his conversations and criticized his behavior afterward. With Marcus and Derek, he was free to be himself, to talk to whoever he wanted, to laugh as loud as he felt like laughing. As the sun began to set, the pack's elder, Margaret, called for everyone's attention. The crowd quieted, and pack members gathered in a loose circle around the central bonfire that was the heart of the festival. "My wolves," Margaret began, her aged voice still carrying authority and warmth. "Tonight we celebrate not just the full moon and our pack bonds, but also the strength and courage of those among us who have faced darkness and emerged into light." She gestured toward Liam, and his heart began to race. He hadn't known he'd be singled out. 6 months ago, Liam showed us all what real bravery looks like. He spoke a truth that many suffer in silence. He stood tall when others might have crumbled. And in doing so, he's helped create a safer, more aware pack for all of us. The pack erupted in howls of approval, the traditional wolf way of showing respect and agreement. Liam felt tears prick his eyes, but they were good tears. healing tears. Margaret continued, "And so, on behalf of the Council and the entire Moonstone Pack, I want to formally recognize Liam not just as our member, but as an example of the strength inherent in all Omegas. You've helped change our pack for the better, young one." More howls, and this time, Liam felt his own wolf surge forward, joining the chorus. His howl was clear and strong, no longer the suppressed, frightened sound it had been under Reed's control. This was the howl of a survivor, of someone who had reclaimed their voice and their power. When the official ceremony concluded, Marcus and Derek approached Liam with expressions that held both love and something else, determination. "We have something we want to ask you," Marcus said, taking one of Liam's hands. Derek took the other. "We've been courting you for 3 months now, and every day has been better than the last. You've become the center of our world. Liam, our wolves recognized you as our mate from the beginning, but now our hearts and minds are in complete agreement." Marcus continued, "We know you've been through trauma that will take time to fully heal from. We know trust is something that has to be rebuilt slowly. But we also know, with absolute certainty, that we want to spend the rest of our lives proving to you every single day that you are loved, valued, and cherished. Liam," they said together, "will you accept our formal mate proposal? Will you bond with us and become the third part of our triad?" The pack had gone silent, everyone watching with bated breath. This was significant. Twin alphas sharing an Omega mate was rare but not unheard of, and it was always considered a blessed union when it happened. Liam looked at the 2 alphas before him, these males who had saved him, protected him, and shown him what real love looked like. His Omega wolf was practically vibrating with joy, urging him to accept, to claim these alphas as theirs just as much as they were claiming him. But more than that, Liam's heart knew the answer. He'd learned over the past 6 months that he was strong enough to choose his own path. He'd learned that he deserved happiness and respect and love. He'd learned that choosing to love again after betrayal wasn't weakness, it was the bravest thing he could do. "Yes," Liam said, his voice clear and certain. "Yes, I'll bond with you, I'll become your mate." The pack exploded in celebration, howls and cheers filling the night air. Marcus and Derek pulled Liam into a careful embrace, mindful as always of his boundaries. But Liam pressed closer, no longer afraid of touch from people who loved him. The formal bonding ceremony would happen during the next full moon, giving the pack time to prepare for the celebration. But in that moment, surrounded by his pack, holding the hands of his future mates, Liam felt complete in a way he'd never imagined possible. The festival continued long into the night, and at one point, Liam found himself standing alone at the edge of the gathering, looking up at the full moon. He thought about the Omega he'd been 6 months ago, scared and broken, and convinced he deserved the pain he was suffering. He thought about Reed and the damage that Alpha had inflicted, damage that had almost destroyed him, but Reed had failed. That was the most important truth. Reed had tried to break Liam, tried to convince him he was worthless and weak and deserving of abuse. But Liam had survived, had spoken his truth, and had reclaimed his life. And now he was thriving, surrounded by people who loved and respected him, about to bond with mates who saw his worth clearly. That was the best revenge Liam could imagine. Not hurting Red back, not seeking to destroy him the way Reed had tried to destroy Liam. The best revenge was living well, being happy, and proving that abuse doesn't define the survivor. The best revenge was healing and helping others heal. The best revenge was showing that love and kindness and respect were stronger than cruelty and control. "You okay?" Derek's voice came from behind him, and Liam turned to see both twins approaching with concerned expressions. "I'm perfect," Liam replied honestly. "I was just thinking about how different my life is now compared to 6 months ago. How much better everything is." Marcus wrapped an arm around Liam's shoulders, and Derek took his hand. "You made it better," Marcus said. "You did the hardest thing possible. You chose to fight for yourself when it would have been easier to give up. That takes more courage than most people have. And you're not alone anymore," Derek added. "You have us, and you have the pack, and you have friends who understand what you've been through. You'll never have to face darkness alone again." Liam leaned into Marcus's embrace, feeling Derek's thumb rub gentle circles on his hand, and knew they were right. The future stretched out before him, full of possibility and promise. There would still be hard days. Healing wasn't linear, and trauma had a way of resurfacing when least expected. But now Liam had tools to handle those days, and more importantly, he had people who would stand beside him through the difficult moments. The three of them returned to the festival, and Liam spent the rest of the night laughing with friends, dancing under the stars, and basking in the warmth of pack bonds. When the celebration finally ended in the early hours of morning, Marcus and Derek drove Liam home to their shared home, because Liam had officially moved in with them 2 weeks ago, making the guest room into an office where he could work on his own projects. As Liam prepared for bed, going through his nightly routine in the comfortable bathroom that now held his personal items alongside the twins, he caught sight of his reflection again. The Omega in the mirror looked peaceful, content, loved. The journey from that terrified assistant who hid bruises under long sleeves to this confident survivor had been long and painful, but it had also been worth it. Liam climbed into the large bed he now shared with Marcus and Derek, nothing inappropriate. Just the comfort of sleeping beside people who made him feel safe and settled between the two alphas. Derek immediately wrapped an arm around him, and Marcus pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. "Sweet dreams, love," Marcus whispered. "Dream of happy things," Derek added, and Liam did. For the first time in years, his dreams were filled not with fear and pain, but with hope and joy and the promise of tomorrow. He dreamed of the bonding ceremony, of continuing his work helping other survivors, of building a life filled with love and respect and mutual care. The scars that Red had left, both physical and emotional, would always be part of Liam's story. But they were no longer the ending of his story. They were just one chapter, the difficult middle part where everything seemed darkest. The true ending, or rather, the new beginning, was this. Liam had found his way out of darkness and into light. He'd found his voice, his strength, and his true pack. And most importantly, he'd found himself again, that core of who he was that abuse had tried to bury. He was Liam, an Omega of worth and value. He was a survivor who had become a thriver. He was loved and loving, scared but brave, healing and whole. As sleep finally claimed him, surrounded by the warmth and safety of his mates, Liam smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys. But whatever came, he would face it not alone but surrounded by love, and that made all the difference. The moon shone through the bedroom window, its light blessing the three wolves who slept peacefully below, their futures intertwined, their hearts beating in sync, their story just beginning. And somewhere in the night, other Omegas who had suffered in silence felt a spark of hope, knowing that if Liam could survive and thrive, maybe they could too. The cycle of silence was breaking, and in its place, a new tradition was forming, one of speaking truth, demanding respect, and refusing to let abuse remain hidden in shadows. This was Liam's revenge, not destruction, but creation. Not hatred, but love. Not silence, but truth. And it was the sweetest, most powerful revenge imaginable. If Liam's story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of healing, hope, and finding love after trauma. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better, that abuse is never acceptable, and that healing is possible. Drop a comment below telling us what part of Liam's journey resonated with you most. Remember, if you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, you are not alone. Reach out to local support services, trusted friends, or family. Your story matters, your safety matters, and you deserve love and respect. Thank you for listening, and until next time, may you find your own path from darkness into light.